This is the Late Round Podcast with your host, JJ Zacharisa.
What's up, everyone? It's JJ Zacharisa, the editor-in-chief at FanDuel and at NumberFire.com, and this is episode 302 of the Late Round Podcast, one of the many shows that are part of the FanDuel Podcast Network. Thanks for tuning in. FanDuel's marquee Sunday Million contest is back with $3 million in prizes up for grabs in Week 8. For just a $9 entry fee, take your shot at the $1 million first place prize this Sunday with the added wrinkle of FanDuel's $50,000 overtime touchdown bonus. Simply roster a player in your Sunday Million lineup that scores a touchdown in overtime, and you'll win a share of $50,000 in bonus cash in addition to any other prizes that you win. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. Now let's get to what you hit play for today, and that's this week's 10 trends. Trend 1 is that Le'Veon Bell has seen 3.2% and 12.9% of the Jets' targets over the last 2 weeks. And those are 2 weeks with Sam Darnold back in the lineup. In 4 games prior to Darnold's return, Bell's target shares per game were 22%, 33%, 18%, and 36%. I'm not sure this is a time to panic about Bell, especially considering the upcoming schedule for the Jets. That's what I highlighted on yesterday's 15 Transactions episode with Robbie Anderson. But I do think that Bell was seeing too high of a share when Darnold was sidelined, mostly because he was an easy out for Luke Falk. To be clear though, I wouldn't expect his share to be consistently under 10% from here on out, and actually I kind of consider Le'Veon Bell a buy candidate. Speaking of the Jets, Sam Darnold completed just 1 of 15 deep ball passes against New England on Monday night. That's bad news. And yeah, it's pretty bad news. The good news is that almost 30% of his passes have gone 15 or more air yards this season. That's the highest rate in the NFL among relevant quarterbacks. He faced a pretty tough matchup in Week 7, arguably the toughest matchup that he's going to face all year. So the deep passes will eventually hit. And considering that schedule that I just talked about, it's another reason that it could be Robbie Anderson season pretty soon. Trend 3 is that Allen Robinson has finished as a top 20 wide receiver in each of his last 3 games. After failing to record a touchdown after 4 games but having 280 receiving yards, Robinson has 3 touchdowns in his past 2 games. This is a good example of why receiving yards and volume in general are going to be more helpful for you to look at when you're examining a player's output, rather than looking at straight up touchdowns. It's why I look at yard to touchdown conversions all the time. Touchdowns regress. And touchdowns come from players who are seeing lots and lots of looks in an offense and gaining lots and lots of yards. That's been the case for Robinson, who, by the way, can we get him a freaking quarterback? So a trade went down with the Patriots and the Falcons on Tuesday where Mohamed Sanu was sent. So I figured a Sanu trend would be worthwhile on today's show. He's seen a 15% target share this year for the Falcons, but he hadn't hit that high of a target share in a single game since Week 4. So basically, things were trending down for Sanu. And as a result, Calvin Ridley's been trending up. I do think this move is a boost for Ridley, but he had also been seeing about 19% of Atlanta's targets over the last few weeks. That was a bump from how he started the season. But if you have Ridley, you can feel a lot more confident plugging him into your lineup each week now. The Patriots have the second lowest pass-to-rush touchdown ratio in football right now. Arizona is the lowest. But the Patriots have run for 12 touchdowns while throwing for 8. Since Tom Brady entered the league, New England's never had a pass-to-rush touchdown ratio below 1. They were at 1 during his career, meaning they threw for as many touchdowns as they ran, but it was the year Tom Brady missed the entire season. So essentially what I'm getting at here is, I would expect this ratio to start to favor the pass a little bit more moving forward. I'm not sure Brady is a buy candidate because buying a quarterback who doesn't run isn't generally a smart idea, but we should expect some positive regression to hit. Trend 6 is that Alshon Jeffery has seen at least 20% of Philadelphia's targets in each of his last 4 games, and he's averaged about a 27% target share over this time. You may have noticed that he hasn't been very usable though, and it's because he has just 5 deep ball targets over this time, and his season-long average depth of target is just 8. So despite the volume, I wouldn't necessarily be trying to get him aggressively, especially since he's got the name value and Deshaun Jackson is eventually going to be back. The Eagles also get the Bills, Bears, and Patriots over their next 3 games. The Falcons haven't recorded a sack in 4 weeks. According to Rich Rebar of Sharp Football Analysis, That's the longest streak since 2008 by any team. Now, the Falcons' secondary is banged up and not very good, but the lack of pass rush has really helped opposing fantasy quarterbacks as well. Those two things are connected. Over this 4-week span, Atlanta's allowed 4 top 5 fantasy performances to quarterbacks. Dawson Knox has seen 17% and 20% of Buffalo's targets over his last 2 games. And according to PFF, he's run 44 routes during that time. The reason this could be important, aside from the fact that it's hard to get that type of target share from a tight end, is that Tyler Kroft played in Sunday's game for the Bills. Without a ton of alternative pass catching options in that offense, Knox could be a decent higher end tight end 2, or even a lower end tight end 1 from here on out. Dalvin Cook has seen fewer than 10% of Minnesota's targets in each of his last 2 games. That never happened across his first 5, with 4 of those games featuring a target share north of 22%. Now, I'm not necessarily concerned about this 2-week trend, but I think it's at least worth noting. This final trend is that Keenan Allen hasn't ranked higher than wide receiver 34 in weekly scoring over the last 4 weeks. That comes after 3 performances where he was wide receiver 7, wide receiver 16, and wide receiver 2. I do see a rebound coming, though. Allen saw a near 30% target share on Sunday after seeing a slight dip in weeks 5 and 6. And during this 4-week span, he still ranks 10th in the league in air yards. You can probably consider Keenan Allen a nice buy low candidate right now. That's going to do it for today's show. Thanks to all of you for listening. If you've got subscribed to the Late Round Podcast, make sure you are by searching for it pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found. And if you're listening to it on Apple Podcasts, do me a favor and leave a rating and review. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter @LateRoundQB. Tomorrow is the matchup show. I'll talk to you then. Thanks for listening.